Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 22nd of February. So coming to the first article, as the borders begin to close. Now the context here is with regards to the anti-immigration and protectionist measures which are taken up by many countries globally, and how is it going to impact the remittances. Now this editorial is important from the general studies paper 2 point of view, where there is a topics in specific regarding India and its diaspora. So the relevance lies there. Now, before we begin, some background is what you need to know. First and foremost, what do you understand by this term remittance? The term remittance in the simplest of terms means the revenue that a person is generating in some foreign country. If a share of that revenue is being sent to the home country, then that constitutes the remittances, and this is a part of the national income. So this is in basic about the remittances. Now, another thing that is vital is that India is globally the one country which receives the highest amount of remittances. That is one thing that you need to know. Also, as a large share, what you need to understand that it is the bigger countries like India, which is followed by China, which is followed by Philippines, Mexico, Pakistan, Nigeria. These bigger countries have a large share in the remittances globally. However, if you compare from the terms of GDP, then in that case, it is smaller countries like Haiti and Nepal. These countries constitute the larger share of remittances. So that is something that is vital from the background aspects. Now coming to the issues which have been discussed in the editorial. The first issue is with regards to a calls for increase in immigration and remittances. Now why is it that only few countries could benefit from this? For example, India benefited, China benefited. So why is it that only particular countries have large share in the global remittances and also in the global rates of immigration? So that is the analysis here. Here you need to understand that in the aftermath of the liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms which began in India in the year 1991, it was these large countries like India and China who took the maximum benefit of these reforms, and globalization resulted in opening of borders and exchange of citizens. So that is something that was somehow benefiting these countries, and in the aftermath of this development, there was a larger share of India's contribution to the migrant workers, and also this resulted in an increase in the remittances. Another analysis which has been given in the editorial is in the aftermath of the 2008 global financial crisis. Now the editorial here says that in the aftermath of this crisis, it is largely the developing countries like India and China which have taken the economic growth forward, and it is because of this benefit also that the rise in migration as well as remittances happened for these particular countries, that is India and China. So that is what has been analyzed here. Another thing that you need to understand that there is a positive impact of migration as well. Now traditionally, immigration is something that is considered as a taboo in India. It was considered as a theory under the brain drain. However, some positive impacts of this was somehow later realized. For example, it results in a gainful employment for a large section of our population that is migrating to other countries. Another thing is that if remittances are increasing, then this is going to be an increase in the national income. It will impact the growth and development in the country. So these positive impacts of immigration is something that is beneficial for India, and as a result of which India changed its stance, and instead of making this issue a taboo, rather it started celebrating the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. So this change in policy is something that is important for us to understand. Another thing that you need to know is with regards to India's rise in remittances. Now there are some facts which are important here, so those I have enumerated them here. First and foremost, you need to know that in the year 1991, the remittances amounted to only $2.1 billion. This, however, suddenly increased to $70.4 billion in the year 2014. So you can see what was the rise here. It was such a huge rise. However, in the aftermath of 2014, due to some global precedences, which we shall be discussing, some global events, there has been a fall in the remittances, and in the year 2017, they comprise of $65.4 billion. So that is something that you should know. Coming next to the debates on migration and the uncertainties that are involved in this arena. Now, as I told you, there are several tendencies which are going on, several sentiments that are going on globally, which are directed against migration, and this is having some uncertainty related to the remittances. So this is one thing that is important. Now in this context, you need to understand that for India, what is the scenario? India has maximum amount of remittances coming from the West Asia, and this makes West Asia very, very important for India. We have continuously been discussing the importance of West Asia and the Look West policy. So that is another importance of West Asia. The second region from where India is receiving maximum share of its remittances is North America, and primarily here the US. And the third is the European countries, and more so UK. So this is something that you need to know here. Now, definitely, if there is some uncertainty, so it is these three regions which have these uncertainties. So we shall be delving into these regions in specific. For example, first we'll come to West Asia. Now, in West Asia, there have been several developments, and this primarily can be dated back to the Arab Spring, which began in the year 2011. And in the aftermath of this particular Arab Spring, what happened is that the socio-political climate in this entire region has changed, and these revolutionary movements there have called upon the governments to take some reforms. And as a result of which, the theme in these Western Asian countries have largely been focused on nationalization. And instead of giving jobs to foreign immigrant workers, the governments in these countries are now focusing on their own youth to curb any revolutionary tendencies in the youth. So this is something that you need to know. Another thing that is important is that entire West Asia has been economically suffering at present. There is a sluggish economic growth in this particular region. We also know that the oil prices had fallen, so that also impacted their economy. So because of this fall in the economy in this region, also jobs in this region are not being created at the same pace as they were in the past. So that is one issue because of which there is an uncertainty of remittances from this region. Some other facts relative in regards to the West Asia, something that you need to know, that there are some terms. For example, the country Oman in West Asia has been following a policy of Omanization. Saudi Arabia government is following a policy of Saudization. Now these are some terms to express the nationalist movements which are taking place in these countries, and these are largely attempts to replace the expatriate workers working in these countries. So this is something that is important for us to know vis-a-vis West Asia. Next, coming to North America and Europe. First and foremost, let's discuss about Europe. Now, you know that recently in the year 2015, Europe faced a major refugee crisis where a large number of refugees from West Asian countries, especially Syria, were migrating to Europe. Now, what happened is that in this backdrop of refugee crisis, a sentiment is what has developed in the European economies, and this is a sentiment of xenophobia, which means a phobia of other people, or some anti-immigration sentiments is what is prevalent. This we have also seen in the recent movement of Brexit, which is being called as the biggest anti-globalization movement. Also, some right-wing parties are coming to power in various European countries. So the tendency in European countries is also to restrict immigration, and this is going to impact the remittances, and especially in India. So that is something that you need to know. Also, in the case of North America, specific focus is to be given on US. Now, in the post-Trump era, US too has adopted several protectionist measures. Not only that, bans are what are being planned to be imposed on Muslim countries. So, entire sentiment in US is also against immigration. So, that is the general environment which is threatening remittances. So, this is the backdrop of this particular editorial. Now, another analysis which has been given is in specific to the state of Kerala. Now, in Kerala, it is approximately 36% of Kerala's GDP, which is comprising of the remittances which the Kerala citizens are sending to their particular state. So that is something that you need to understand here, that Kerala is a very important state, or rightfully the best state to study about the impacts of immigration and remittances. So that is the importance of Kerala as a case study. So in this context, what has been analyzed is that even in Kerala, in the aftermath of 2014, what has been seen is that there is a drop in the remittances. Now this drop is primarily because of two reasons. Now two types of people are immigrating from Kerala. One is the unskilled, or for that matter the semi-skilled people who prefer to migrate to other countries. Now these people have somehow been replaced by other countries like Philippines and Nepal, who are providing cheaper labor in these countries. So as a result of which, it is this one section which has been affected in the immigration, and another section which has been impacted is the educated people in Kerala. Now, because of some prosperity that Kerala has seen in the past, because of these income from remittances, what has happened is that a large part of the Kerala's youth is now educated, and so they are not seeking for unskilled jobs, rather they are seeking for skilled jobs. And as a result of this, emigration in this state is again becoming from this particular state is becoming difficult. So in this entire backdrop, what has happened is that Kerala is facing some challenges, that now not only is that the newer youth is unable to migrate outside the state, also the youth that had emigrated in the past is now returning back to Kerala. So that is the entire picture in Kerala. So in this regard, some suggestions is what has been given, that some alternative innovative policies is what need to be adopted, both in this case of Kerala as well as some lessons need to be drawn from Kerala, and for generally all over the country, some innovative policies is what is required for ensuring that we skill our youth, we reskill our youth, we ensure education for the youth as well as for those who are coming back, or for those migrants who are coming back to the country, or for that matter their state. So some rehabilitation of these people, reintegration of these people is something that the government needs to think about, so that it is not a crisis which emerges in this state. Obviously, if Kerala is having 36% of its GDP coming from remittances, and this is going to get impacted, then there is a situation of an economic crisis which the state can face. So the government needs to prepare itself well in future with vis-a-vis this scenario. So this is something that is important. Now, another thing which is very important is with regards to the social costs of migration. Now, all of this above scenario might present a picture that migration is something that is very important, and remittances indeed are very important. It cannot be denied. But some negative impacts of migrations is also something that we should be aware of, and we should bring it in our answers. There are some social costs which are related to migration. For example, the theory of brain drain still continues. That there are cases that scientists from India, doctors from India, after completing their education, they are going to foreign countries, and this is a major concern for India, that it is resulting in a loss of human capital. So that is one important analysis. Also, some social costs is what is analyzed here. For example, when a person migrates to a foreign country, he leaves behind his family, and often it is the old parents who are left behind, and this results in some social problems. For example, the parents might face loneliness, they might face depression. So these kind of issues, they might not get adequate health care, which in our country is largely provided by the families. There is no government system for providing such care to the elderly. So all of this is something that impacts the country. So this is something that is important here. And if this immigration is going to be stopped, so it should not be looked at from one perspective of economics only. Some social benefits are associated with it, that people will remain within the country and they can contribute within the country. So that is one analysis which you should bring about in your answers. Another thing is with regards to the impact that this ban on migrations is going to have on politics. Now here what is analyzed is that it is going to impact the politics of both internally within the country as well as international politics. We are seeing that the laws that US is going to pass with regards to immigration policy is going to act as an irritant between India-US relations. Also with regards to India-UK relations, this becomes important. Not only that, if these people are going to come back to India, then it can create some political problems which need to be looked into and which need to be addressed before time. So that is one analysis which has been given. So the final conclusion here would be that definitely there is a degree of uncertainty with regards to immigration and remittances, and solely depending on these is a big mistake that any country would make, and some foresight is what is warranted in this regard. Some innovative policies is what is warranted, and the government needs to address this issue. So that is the entire analysis here. The topic is very, very important. It covers a large aspects of the topic of India and its diaspora, and a question can directly come in this general studies paper too. So that is the relevance here. Now coming to the next article, learning from Cauvery. Now this topic we have discussed much in detail in the past, so I will not go into the background aspect of it. We shall only restrict our discussion to the newer aspects which have been discussed in this editorial. So the context here is with regards to the recent Supreme Court judgment on the Cauvery River water sharing. We all know that the Supreme Court's judgment is now the final final judgment, and as per this judgment, the Supreme Court has said that an additional 14.75 TMC feet of water will be given to Karnataka from the share of Tamil Nadu. So this is the only difference or the only change which the Supreme Court judgment has made from the 2007 judgment by the Cauvery River Water Dispute Tribunal. So that is something that is relevant for us. Now coming to the issues which have been analyzed, the first issue is with regards to a relative calm in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Now the problem with river water sharing in India is that this is a very, very politicized issue. And as a result of which several political developments happen whenever there is a judgment given in this regard. However, contrary to the past, in the present scenario, what is being seen is that such political developments have not happened in both Tamil Nadu as well as in Karnataka. So there is a relative calm which needs to be appreciated. So that is one analysis. Another important aspect here is that maybe this calm is because the judgment is a final one. So what needs to be assured in future cases is, what can be drawn from this particular experience is that whenever a judgment is given, some degree of finality has to be assured to it. For example, even when this tribunal judgment was given in the year 2007, this was not considered as a final judgment. Firstly, because the government did not notify it. Secondly, because these states preferred to go to the Supreme Court. If this judgment in itself was considered final, then maybe this calm could have been restored even then. So that is the analysis here. Another issue is with regards to the Cauvery Management Board. Now here you need to know that it has been Tamil Nadu government who has been continuously demanding for a Cauvery Management Board, and Karnataka was always opposing the idea of a management board. But the Supreme Court in its judgment has reiterated that this management board should be formed. So as a result of which it is now going to be formed by the government. So that is one analysis which is important here. Another thing that you need to know is that Karnataka Assembly elections are due within a few months. So it is being feared that the government might postpone setting up this Cauvery Management Board because it wants to get some political milieu in the state of Karnataka. So that is one fear which has been raised here. This is an example which you can also use for the idea of one country, one election, because that simultaneous elections for the center as well as states, because what happens is that in the political calendar of the central government is not going to allow it to make some decisions which are vital and which are in line with the Supreme Court decision. So that is where this example can be used. That is the relevance. Another thing which is very, very important is that there is a need to dehyphenate water and politics. Now, in all the three issues that we have discussed, we are only discussing that how this matter has not been politicized or how there is a threat of politicization. But one thing needs to be understood, that water is something that is a basic necessity and politics on this cannot be justified. Politics is where the rights of one group are to be superseded by another group. However, when it comes to a basic need like water, this cannot be accepted because water is required by everybody. It does not matter to which state a person belongs to. The very existence of a person is his guarantee to a basic necessity like water. So this is one important analysis, that it is important that in India politics is not played on such sensitive issues like water. So that is something that is vital. Another thing which has been given in this particular editorial is with regards to some other cases where there has been politicization on sharing of river waters. For example, in the Satluj Yamuna link in the year 2004, the Punjab government politicized this issue. So that is something that is important. Also recently we had seen the Mahanadi River dispute between Chhattisgarh and Odisha. In that case also there is a political undertone to the dispute. So that is something that is important, that this should not happen, and this particular case should go down in history as an example of non-politicization. So that is something that is important here. That is the analysis. Indeed, Cauvery River water dispute is going to be important for this year mains as well. So that is the relevance. Coming to the next article. Now these two articles I have clubbed them together because they are both in specific to Syria. So that is the relevance here. Now coming to the context is with regards to the civil war in Syria. One thing that is important that you should know is these two facts. The civil war has been continuing for past 7 years. It almost began in the beginning of 2011 and approximately 4 lakh people have till now been killed. And another lakhs of people have been displaced from Syria. So this is one of the biggest global challenges that the entire world is facing. So that is the relevance. Now coming to an understanding of the issues which are relevant for us. First and foremost, you need to know that even if you do not, you're not required to go much into the details, some broader understanding of all the multiple players who are active in Syria is something that becomes important for us. So first and foremost, you need to understand that there is one group, that is the Syrian regime. It is under the former President Bashar al-Assad. Now this regime is largely restricted to this particular region, that is the region along the Mediterranean Sea. So this is something that you should know. Now this comprises of Bashar al-Assad, and he is being backed by a nexus of two countries, Russia and Iran. Another group which is backing this particular regime here is the Hezbollah group, and that is something that will become important for our discussion today. Another thing that you need to know is that this regime is being opposed to by some rebels, and the rebels are dominant in this particular part of Syria. So this is the region which is largely dominated by the rebels, and the rebels are being backed by countries like the US, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. So these are the countries that are backing the rebel groups. Now, what has happened is that the Hezbollah in this region, which is supporting the regime, has got Iran's support, and so this group Hezbollah is on a rise. Now, Hezbollah has been declared as a terrorist group by Israel, and as a result of which, Israel is a newer player in this region. Primarily, what happened is that the southern region of Syria, because of its borders with Israel, was largely a calmer region. Now, this is the region of the Golan Heights, which partly Israel had occupied in the year 1967. So Israel was trying to maintain some peace in the region, and Israel was not a very active player or participant in the Syrian civil war. But what has happened is that now the rebels have been weakened and the regime is strengthening day by day. So Israel is now concerned about the rise of Hezbollah, and as a result of which Israel has also entered the civil war. So that is something that is important. Another thing that you need to understand is with regards to the Russia-Israel understanding. Now Israel is largely interfering through airstrikes in this region, where it is targeting the Hezbollah areas in Syria. So that is something that you need to know. However, it has a secret understanding with Russia, where both the countries have decided that they will not interfere with each other, and they will allow each country to do their thing in Syria. So that is something that is an important analysis which has been discussed in the editorials. Another thing which is important that you need to understand is with regards to the dual role that Russia is playing in this particular region. Now Russia is siding the regime along with Iran. So this is an Iran and Russia nexus. However, Israel is opposing Iran. Israel and Iran are arch rivals. But Russia is supporting both Israel as well as Iran. So this is a dual role that Russia is playing, and this is something that is unethical. So that is something that has been highlighted. Another thing that you need to know is with regards to the Kurds and Turkey. Now this is the region which is dominated by the Kurds here, the Kurdish population. And what has happened is that they had formed a militia. This militia was backed by US primarily to fight the Islamic State. However, now Turkey has an objection to the rise of Kurdish militia, because this is known for some terrorist developments in Turkey. So Turkey wants to interfere, and now Turkey has sent its troops into this northern region. So that is the role of Turkey. That is something that is important. Some other players are also active in this region, as I had mentioned before. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and some other Arabian countries are also active in this particular region. So this is the entire brief of all the players who are active in this civil war in Syria. So this is something that we should be aware of. Even if a direct question is not going to be asked in the paper, you should be aware of from your interview perspective. So that is the relevance here. Now, one thing that you need to understand, that this entire issue with vis-a-vis Syria has resulted in a huge human tragedy, and this is a major cause of concern. Approximately 4 lakh people have lost their lives. Also, you need to know that in the year 2013, there was a chemical attack that the regime had done on the people. So civilian losses, civilian lives is something that is a major cause of concern, and this human aspect in this entire issue is something that is not being looked into. So that is one criticism which you should give vis-a-vis the Syrian conflict. Another thing is that with these multiple players in the picture, an end to this conflict is something that is not coming in sight. So that is one concern, that is a global concern. Even the UN is not being able to do anything because of these multiple players. So that is the entire analysis here. That is the relevance also. So coming to the next article, power games. Now the context here is that recently the Delhi Chief Secretary has been assaulted by two Aam Aadmi Party MLAs. Now this is a major dark chapter between vis-a-vis the executive and the legislative. This is something that becomes very, very important for us. So that is the relevance here. Now coming to the issues which are important. The first issue is with regards to the abnormal timing of the meeting. Now when this assault happened, it took place at night when the Chief Secretary was called to the house of Delhi Chief Minister, and it is at his house that this assault took place. So the timing of the meeting and the space of the meeting clearly shows that it was an informal meet. So it is being accused that maybe this meeting had been set up to intimidate the officer here. So that is something that is important for us to know. Another thing is that there are two power centers in Delhi. So this is a problem for the bureaucracy because they get confused as to whom they are supposed to respond to. Their power centers is, one is the Chief Minister and the second power center is the Lieutenant Governor. Now, why is it that this particular case of Delhi has two power centers? Now, the answer for this is in the special constitutional status that has been given to Delhi. This is something that is important for us. Now, under this, firstly, you need to know about the Article 264 of the Constitution. Under this article, it is the Parliament which is responsible for making laws of all the union territories, and as a result of which, Delhi, which initially was a union territory, was governed by the central government. However, in the year 1991, the government came up with the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act, and under this Amendment Act, the government designated Delhi as the National Capital Territory of Delhi and provided it with a legislative assembly, and some powers were given to this legislative assembly. But you need to understand that Delhi is also the seat of the national government, as a result of which all the powers that any other state government enjoys is something that is not given to the Legislative Assembly of Delhi. So this is where the conflict is arising, and it is arising time and again. So that is something that is important. Now, as per this amendment, it was the Article 239AA which was amended. And under this, the state government was excluded from control of state subjects. And in particular, three particular state subjects is what had been included. These include land, police and public order. So this is something that is important, that the state government in Delhi does not have a power over the land, does not have power over the police and public order, and this is resulting into continuous conflict. So this is one important analysis, that this conflict is something that is not something new. It is happening since this government has come into power, and it is continuously happening between the government and the bureaucracy. So the focus of this conflict is wrong. This conflict should ideally happen between the state government and the central government, where the state government should demand for more powers to Delhi, or for that matter restoring complete statehood to Delhi. But rather than that, the focus has been towards brushing aside the bureaucracy, and this is an immoral practice. So that is something that is important. Another thing which is important in this particular episode is with regards to the morale of the bureaucracy. Now you need to know that the bureaucracy is not in particular subordinate to the politicians. Even though they are working under the politicians, they are largely subordinate to the constitution itself, and they have to work without fear of favor, and they are not supposed to get intimidated. So such actions by the political executive on the permanent executive is a major dark chapter, as I had mentioned before. It is a step back and it is unacceptable. So this is something that is important for us to know. The way ahead would be simply that the government should gather people's support, and more popular movements should come up if they want greater devolution of powers to the elected government in Delhi. But this kind of behavior by the politicians towards the bureaucracy is going to be unacceptable. So that is the way ahead to this issue. And indeed, this topic will be very, very important. It might come in the GS paper too. In the past also, a question has come on the Article 239AA. So this can be repeated. That is the relevance here. Now, based on today's discussions, please try and attempt these questions within a word limit of 150 words. So with this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.